I'm a believer, a family man, and a racer at heart. And now, I'm going to bring it all together in one place. Welcome to FastFaith, the podcast where passion meets purpose and speed meets the spirit. From the tight, unforgiving turns at the bull ring known as the Madhouse, to the high-stakes, high-bank turns of Daytona and Talladega, I'm sitting down with the drivers who live it, breathe it, and bring that heat in every lap. So buckle in, fire it up. The lights are off and we're coming to the green flag. Get ready to smash that gas. This is Fast Faith.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Fast Faith. I am Michael Weiser, and today we're shifting gears a little bit, and we're going to be joined by an up-and-coming ARCA driver by the name of Brayton Laster. He is affectionately known to his fans as the Pizza Man for his love of pizza, so that's something that, I've got in common with him as well. I love pizza. He's grown up driving cars in different kinds of disciplines up there in I guess, consider Indiana the Midwest, I guess. Would that be considered Midwest?
Oh yes, we
So,
are very Midwest people here. Yep.
yeah. So we're connecting remotely. He's up there, I guess, hanging out in his shop or his house or wherever he's at. So appreciate him though taking some time to join us for Fast Faith. I say us and me all the time when I do these, but it's literally just me. But I guess I mean us and we for the audience and everybody that watches any of the videos and stuff. But to get started off, Brayton, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did your passion for racing start, and how does faith play into that story in your life?
Yeah, so you hit a lot of the good key points there. My name is Brayton Laster, more commonly known though as the Pizza Man. It seems every time I go to a racetrack, I'm wearing my pepperoni pizza helmet, I have pepperoni pizza shoes, and a fire seat. People see the pizza thing, they go, "You're the pizza guy. I've seen you on TV," and they don't really know my name outside of the pizza guy. I'm from Indianapolis, but I race in the ARCA Series, so we are racing literally all over the country. From Daytona to Phoenix to Toledo, Berlin, Michigan, to Elko, Minnesota, and Charlotte, and Kansas. We raced everywhere. So
Yeah.
I got a lot of interaction with different fans and different markets and whatnot. So I grew up though racing here in Indianapolis. As most kids do around Indianapolis is a very racing town. We have the
Oh
Indy
yeah.
500 here, and perfect timing because they got Fast Fridays today after recording this, and so my dad, way back in the day, he grew up as a racing fan, going to the racetrack, and he eventually started getting into owning and working on cars himself. Locally, nothing fancy like IndyCar or NASCAR, and just all short track stuff. And obviously, once I was old enough to walk there, the I started going to the racetrack with him, and that is where my love, my passion for racing really, was born. I fell in love with it right off the bat, and I would cry in the driveway if I couldn't go to the racetrack with him because he couldn't find somebody to watch me, or he'd be racing and he'd have no help. And I don't know if I can say this, but I will. But I'm not 100% sure he just didn't find a stranger to leave me with in the grandstands when he was racing. He could just find someone. Hey, watch this kid. I'll be back in 15 minutes. So
Yeah.
uh, that was a big part of my racing growing up, or a big part of my introduction to racing growing up was going to the track with my dad, and that's where a lot of the pizza thing came from too. Is when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I started racing go karts, and the track is called the Indianapolis Speedrome. It's a flat 5th mile here on the east side of Indianapolis, and that's where I raced for the first 8, 9, 10 years of my career, from go karts to street stocks to four cylinders, and eventually, outlaw figure eight late models, figure eight racing, a big deal up here in Indiana, and that was where my career was for a long time. We transitioned to dirt late models in 2018. We ran those for many, many years around the Midwest. That's when the first time we really started to kind of branch out. We raced in Illinois, we raced in St. Louis, we raced in Kentucky, Tennessee quite a bit. We traveled a lot, and I ran those for many years. Had a lot of success in that. A lot of good points finishes, a lot of rookie of the years, a lot of podium points finishes. With touring divisions, Ultimate Heart of America is a big touring late model series here in the Midwest. So a lot of success there. And then in 2022, we never really planned to go NASCAR racing or ARCA racing. We never really thought it would even be a remote option. 2022, I got paired up with a great team out of Virginia, Mullins Racing, and we were able to put together a deal to run Daytona in 2022. And Daytona was a very, I guess, we a little too big for our britches. A lot of people thought, and I kind of thought the same thing too. I'd never raced on an asphalt track bigger than a 3/10 mile, really. I
Oh
mean,
wow, yeah.
and you're just going to Daytona. We obviously did a lot of testing in January with the team. I think I did 70 or 80 practice laps in January during the ARCA test at Daytona. So I had a little bit of experience coming into the race, and I knew I'd always be protected. I knew I'd always be safe, and that was a big thing about that. It's like, hey, I know that I'm gonna be okay no matter what happens, and we did that first race, and it went okay. It went really really well. We got the top 15 in my debut there, and we were able to put together a deal for Talladega. Talladega didn't go so great. Had a pretty crazy crash at about 185 miles an hour. I got hit head on, and I literally walked away, got out of the car unscathed. I mean, I don't think I was even bruised. I mean, it was a truly remarkable feat. Like, I didn't have a headache, I didn't have a concussion, I didn't have any bruises, I wasn't sore. I just popped out like I just finished the race. And it was a pretty crazy crash. And it's one of those crashes that they show on the highlight reel every time we go back to Talladega. And so I've been kind of a bit of a journeyman the last couple of years in the ARCA Menards platforms, running in the ARCA East and ARCA Main series, and for a wide variety of teams. And pretty much I became known as the guy when a team needed a driver that they knew could get the most out of a car, give feedback on the car, kind of play with setup, get notes like that. I was the guy that give a call. So it's like, hey, Brayton, we need to do Phoenix. Hey, Brayton, we need to do Watkins Glen. Hey, we need to do Iowa. We need to do Springfield. I was getting calls, 3 or 4 days before races asking if I could drive across the country to go race. And I work, I guess, as a welder a little bit here in Indianapolis. I help my dad out at our small junkyard. But also, we have a small business that we sell and make AC cages for AC units, and so I do a lot with that. I do a lot of office work. I do a lot of answering phones and invoices, and so luckily I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can take time off as I need to be able to go race. And so that's where my career's been the last couple of years, is being a journeyman.
Well,
This year, though, we were able to put together a deal with Wayne Peterson Motorsports to go full time. And Wayne's been a guy who's been an ARCA for over 40 years, and he's never really had a full time deal. Put together. Had a lot of drivers that almost make the full season, or a lot of drivers attempt the full season, but no one really committed. Recently per se. And he's 86 years old, and he's kind of getting up there in age. I think he wanted to give
yeah.
a good points run, one last shot, and we got together last year at Indianapolis Racing Park in Salem. We ran those 2 races with him. We got him a top 10 finish, and after that, I mean, after those 2 races last year, that's when we put the two together on full time this year, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot, man. That's pretty
It is that
exciting
was the
stuff.
short version.
Yeah. So early on in your career, how does you say like you've been a journeyman and things like that, and gone from different place to different place, and helped out in different ways. I think you posted something on Facebook the other week of where you were going over the wall with the pit crew
Yeah,
or whatever. So I mean, you really are just a jack of all trades when it comes to the motorsports world. At a very young age as well, 22, correct? Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah, so you've been racing a long time to be only 22. That's pretty impressive. You got a lot of accolades already there early on in your career. And you know, we see so many times though that drivers can get kind of discouraged, or maybe feel like they're kind of stuck. So where do you kind of pull your faith into kind of helping you continue to chase your dream of being a race car driver in a season where sometimes maybe you feel like, man, I'm out here racing my heart out, but we're finishing, 28th.
Yeah.
Or, like, oh man, I really thought something was going to come together with that deal, but I only raced those 2 races and I never heard from him again. But how do you pull your faith into kind of helping you through those time periods in your career so far?
That's a big part of it, and especially being not from a family who owns a multi-million-dollar company where, where money is a big part in today's racing scene, and there's a lot of uncertainty that you mentioned. And I've been in a lot of deals where exactly how you mentioned, like you do a deal with a company for 1 or 2 races, or a deal with a team for 1 or 2 races, and it just doesn't work out. And there's not a lot of certainty in this sport, in this career path. Like I said, I still work here a lot in Indy, kind of help pay the bills, help keep the lights on and everything. And then I'd like to one day call racing a full time job, but it's it's hard to at this level, especially driving for such a small team on that's very low in the totem pole. But I always go into every time up until the end of the season. I wasn't full time. I didn't know when I'd be racing. That was a huge deal of it, and I'd always sit there and you know just kind of talk to myself and the man above, and kind of say, hey, I'd love another opportunity. I'd love to keep it going. I'd love to keep going at it. And I said, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And there were many times where a deal would kind of literally fall off thin air, like a deal that shouldn't have happened did happen. Like
Wow.
it just it's hard to kind of explain, but it's happened so many times. It's almost like there's like a bigger essence there, where we'll be sitting there like 2 days before a race, and we're like, hey, we're not going to have any tire money or any money to even get to the track, or we spent our last dime trying to make it happen. And all of a sudden, somebody will reach out and say, hey, I got a couple $1,000 to get on a race car. Like, what can that get me? That goes a long way for a small team. And or a great example, I'll tell you, in 2023, I kind of thought my career in ARCA was done for the most part. I was kind of separated from Mullins Racing after Daytona in 2023. We did Charlotte with one team, Fast Track Racing, but after that, we had nothing lined up. And I mean, we weren't in talks with teams, we weren't in talks with sponsors, we had absolutely nothing at all lined up. And I mentioned my big dirt background, racing dirt 8 mile roads for many years around the Midwest. ARCA, we run 2 dirt races, we race Springfield and DuQuoin, Illinois. They're a mile or so, I think one might be a little bit bigger. Dirt tracks, though, they're horse tracks basically that we race on. USAC and everything races over there. And, I always said I wanted to run the ARCA dirt races. I have that dirt background, a lot of the field doesn't, and I think we could have a lot of success there with a small team. And literally months leading up to the event, I'd reach out to the team, I'd reach out to some sponsors, and just nothing was happening, nothing was getting together, and I was in a pretty low state, at that time, kind of like, hey, it's cool, like we got to race Daytona a couple times, got to race Talladega, got to race Charlotte, I got to race all these cool tracks, but that was it, and I thought that was it. I was going to kind of make those memories, or I made those memories and kind of set them to the side. I thought that was all they were going to be, was memories at that point. And literally the Monday of Springfield, a team had reached out and said, "Hey, we need a driver. Like, we don't really care what you can and can't bring. Like, we just need a driver." And it was a team that I didn't really know. I'd never talked to them before. I'd never. I mean, I might have said hi in the garage one time, and that was it. And actually, they're out of nowhere, and that was a big part of my career, kind of getting back on track. Like, this deal that should have happened. Like, a team very rarely just reaches out to you saying, "Hey, we need a driver." At least at that point. And I ran Springfield. I got top 10, my first ever top 10 in ARCA. And then they invited me back a couple weeks later to DuQuoin, the other dirt race. Got another top 10 there. And then we ended up running Salem, Indiana with that team. We got another top 10. And that team was Rise Motorsports, who now I have done a handful of races with. Actually, like you mentioned, a couple weeks ago, they were running the ARCA East race at Nashville. So it wasn't for points for our main series. So I don't. I'm only full time in the main series, not the East series. So each has their own standalone races where they're separate points, so I don't have to run those. And I was down there watching, and they needed help, and I ended up going over the wall as a jackman for them. So that was a deal that really fell into our laps. That you don't hear about deals like that being made at this level very often. That was a deal that really helped catalyst my career back on track.
Yeah. Wow. So it sounds like God's at work in your racing career in a whole lot of different ways with providing you different opportunities when it seems like there's no opportunity there, and you're just hanging out, yeah, working at your job or doing different things, and then boom, phone rings, and hey, we need a driver, we need a jack man, we need this going on. I mean,
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
seems like God is really kind of just providing some awesome opportunities, like you said. It's that he's that entity that's there that's giving you these
The
opportunities
bigger
when
picture. Yeah.
when it feels like there's none there. So kind of getting into faith a little bit in the racing world. When you're at the track, do you participate in any kind of like team prayers, or do you have like your own time, like quiet time before races where you say some prayers for
Mhm.
yourself and things like that?
Yeah, that's one thing that I found really cool about the ARCA platform is they always have a minister there from Racing Ministries. So every week during the drivers' meeting, they always have a little prayer session. So we all kind of sit there and wish for the safety of everyone and wish we all got there and we come out in one piece. And I always thought that was pretty cool getting to do that. And then they also have a more private prayer moment there in the pit area. And I wish I did go over there more often. It's just, at the track, sometimes you're very, very busy, between other
Yeah,
commitments. You're not really sure where that private prayer might fall in the schedule. But always, before we hop in the car, we always try to do a team or a family prayer. It's
yeah,
kind of, hey, like, just make sure we all come out here okay. And, I've come out okay so far after 20 or so races. And
yeah,
so far, it seems to be working. And always, they have a minister there that'll come around for with each driver and also pray with each driver too. So that's always a pretty cool moment. I know cool is coming out the correct word to use, but it's neat to see that faith is
yeah.
still very prevalent in the garage at that level, and it's a part of every single race that we do. So.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest things that I love about racing. Other than just the racing, is the openness of faith that a lot of drivers share with each other. Like I was saying, you can be rivals and things like that, but then when you're out of the car, or if the person's in a wreck, you're running over, making sure, hey, you're okay, everything all right. You're lifting each other up in prayer before the race, and you got that rivalry on the track maybe, but then you got that camaraderie of faith, behind the scenes that a lot of the fans may not know about or see. But
Yeah.
every time you go to a racetrack, whether it's small bull rings out there in the Midwest or small bull rings here in North Carolina or other parts of the Southeast and throughout the country, it doesn't matter how big or small the track or the venue or the event is, there is always a prayer,
Mhm.
like like big time speaking with the fans and everybody enjoying and joined in before during the invocations and things like that. But then there's also team prayers and private prayers, and there's different tracks sometimes that even have like a small little church service and things like that set up for the family and the drivers and the teams and stuff to kind of participate in, because the sport is done on Saturdays and Sundays and Fridays and
Yeah.
different things of the week where you may not be able to go to those church events or those church services that you really want to be a part of. So I've always thought it's awesome that there's so much faith that's involved in racing, and I'm glad to kind of also see through a lot of different things that there's kind of like a revival taking place where some drivers are starting to feel confident again about talking about those things. So I appreciate your time this evening to talk about your career, talk about different things that you've seen. So kind of talk about different challenges or stops and starts in your career again, to kind of go back to that and kind of involve your faith into that a little bit. What would you say is maybe the toughest thing or toughest challenge or pit stop, I guess, if you want to call it that, that you've had to go on where you've really kind of had to lean into your faith and lean into God to say, like, you're the only thing that's going to get me through this and get me on to that next thing. We've talked about the different opportunities that have just poof came out of nowhere, But has there been a challenge in your life yet, even if it's not even necessarily in the racing world, where you just really kind of had to press into God and been like, "Hey, I only know you're going to get me through this."
I mean, not necessarily, thankfully. I mean, I know there's been a lot of friends that they've been in some very very low points, and I've had a lot of, I guess, miracle moments, and I guess the closest I think I've probably been this year, kind of tying in the race and everything, is we went to Daytona this year, knowing that hey, it was a long shot for us to make the field. We're a very very small team. We knew we didn't have the motor that we needed to qualify, and it would literally take a miracle for us to persevere and come out on top and to push through and to be able to not just have a good run, but to make the race. For us, making the race is a very very big deal. First race of the season, first race of a full time season, and obviously you want to kick off the season with a bang. And we knew going into it, hey, like we're probably not going to make the field. Like I was telling sponsors, I'm like, hey, like if you guys don't want to come down, that's fine. Like we're probably not racing realistically. I'm just being blunt, being honest. Like we'll probably be watching from the sidelines come Saturday. And we sat there on Thursday, and literally out of nowhere, I mean, out of nowhere, right before we were ready to go on track for practice, Florida weather, everything starts appearing out of nowhere, and it starts pouring. I mean, raining, tsunami-like winds all over the speedway, and ended up having to cancel practice and qualifying because of that. We were to start the race by owner's points. We were locked in the field, and that was a pretty cool moment where I mean, I, I don't know why, but I sat there and told myself like, hey, I'm not racing this weekend. Like, we're going to practice, we're going to qualify, and that's it. Like, we are not making it past qualifying. And all weekend, I just sat there and kind of like, well, this is it's going to suck. It's going to hurt, it's going to sting. I'm going to get out of the car, and we didn't make the field in 2024. That one hurt a lot. Like our first like big DQ at this level. That one hurt a lot, and I'm like, I'm gonna go back to back DQs here. The first person, 15 years of ARCA to miss a race 2 years in a row. So when that rain came out, I was like, that's pretty spectacular right there. And that was probably the biggest moment though, where I looked to the God and say, hey, like. I don't need your help here, but if you want to make it rain a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. There's a lot more dire things that he could be out there helping people with. So obviously, I wasn't too pressed about it, but he helped me out. So that was a big moment.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool there. How do you handle? I mean, racing's an up and down world. We've already talked about the times of I get a call this day to come race a car. I get a call this day. You finally got something set for the whole year this year, which has to feel really good and reassuring to kind of establish your name and establish results that other teams can look to for in the future. But kind of looking back the last couple of years, how do you handle maybe the self doubt or the comparisons or the slow seasons that come with being an underdog team and come with being, kind of a younger up and coming driver that's unfortunately had to live the journeyman kind of life as a driver? How do you handle those kind of things to kind of help keep your head on straight and not get down on yourself or depressed and stay kind of confident knowing that God has something out there for you?
That's there's definitely a lot of low moments, like you said, and that's a big part of it is kind of being able to push through it, knowing, hey, back in 2022, 2023, like I said, I didn't know when I'd be able to race again or how often I'd be able to race. And that's one thing that's really changed is knowing now a full-time season especially is like, hey, we're going to have our low moments. We're going to have our bad runs. We're going to have our wrecks. We're going to have our bad days. But at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be able to, one, hop back in the race car again. I know we have another race coming up, and that's something I always look forward to. Is, today might not go our way, but tomorrow might. There will always be another opportunity, another chance to turn it around.
Right. Yeah, that's good. So when you're not racing, how do you live out your faith day to day? Like I know you've done food drives and different things like that for some of the people that have maybe hopped on and been sponsors for you. But how do you, other than things like that, how do you live out your faith in day to day life?
Yeah, so we'll touch up on the food drives a little bit. So I do have a nonprofit here in Indy called Drive for Humanity, where we do a lot of nonprofit work, like you said, and mainly food drives. So every track we go to, every city we race in, we try to put together a food drive where we raise, or we collect, canned goods, non-perishable items, clothing, hygiene products, and whatnot, to donate to a local, food bank or shelter around that town, around the city that we're racing in. I mean, that's kind of a way we're able to get back to our community because there's a lot of people that they're just down and up. They're having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, a bad decade. They're just down on their luck, and sometimes what they need is just a little helping hand. And there's unfortunately a lot of poverty and a lot of homelessness going on in today's world, and people just don't really have an answer. I feel like, and I can't guide them to that answer, but I can help them get a little bit closer. And so that's a big thing we do with Drive for Humanity is, try to get them back on their feet, try to help them, get a little bit more stability in their life and kind of hope they're able to go and find, you know, find God or find something that they're able to look forward to and hope they get back on the feet, and that's a big thing we do with Drive for Humanity. So as far as the daily life, we do a lot of work throughout the week and whatnot. As I mentioned a little bit ago, do a lot with youth group. While I was younger, was an avid youth grouper. Also, we went to church on Sundays, and with racing, it's hard to kind of balance that schedule, like you talked about a little bit ago. And was very big early back in this before I was even racing. I played for my church basketball team, and I actually met a lot of friends that I'm still friends with today. So that was a pretty cool connection. A lot of them actually are involved with racing because we were friends together when they come to races and they would do stuff at the racing. So that's pretty neat to see. But I'm very good friends too with IndyCar driver Stingray Robb, who's very much you know religious and believes in God and looks up to him every single day. And we talk about that a lot in the gym. And he has I believe I don't even still does, but he had pray.com as a sponsor, so he gets like a different Bible verse every day, and we'll talk about that occasionally too. So you can talk to Stingray about that. That's pretty sweet. So that's just different ways we try to incorporate everything. It's obviously that's one thing that I don't like about being a race car driver. It's very hard to balance everything
Right.
you have going on, and there's normally a lot going
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you see racing as like a platform for reaching people
on.
to kind of even now before hopefully if fame hits and you hit the big time and you get a good contract one year with a big team, and do you see racing even now in the journeyman type kind of career and just kind of where you're at right now in it, do you see it being kind of like a platform where you can kind of reach people and do different things to kind of advance the community but also just let people know that Jesus loves them?
I mean, I'd like to one day, and that's a part of Drive Community, definitely making Drive Community like a bigger thing at some point. Kind of include that part of our mission statement and our goal. Um, but you know, I'd like to definitely grow my following and my impact and use that following and my connection to spread that mission. Make it where we can help out more people, educate more people, and try and give back more to our community that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. What would you say to other young people? Maybe they're in their early teen years, or maybe getting into their middle teen years or their late teen years, and they're coming up through those ranks on those short tracks out there in Indianapolis area or anywhere in the country that may see these videos and see your conversation here with me. What do you kind of have to say to them to help them kind of keep chasing those big dreams, even when they feel maybe stuck or unnoticed by the people that they need to get seen by?
I think the big thing is keep pushing after it. Stuff's gonna happen. Stuff's gonna knock you down. You're always gonna have to just stand back up. I think with God, it's definitely a little easier to do when you have someone kind of in your corner like that. Someone to look up to that is, a big thing. I see a lot of drivers get knocked down, and it's hard. I get it to stand back up sometimes, but you just got to keep going after, got to keep, chugging along, got to keep going for it. Because, one day you keep pushing at something hard enough, it'll eventually break through. It's going to push back. It's going to push back a lot. It's going to push back hard. But one day you're going to overcome that. And I think that's a part of, reaching out to younger drivers and talking. I mean, I have a lot of drivers that look up to me. Younger drivers that from go karts to the speedrome or they race quarter midgets, across the world or something like that. I got a lot of different people that will reach out to me for advice, and the big thing I tell them is, hey, you're gonna get knocked down a lot. Like this sport will spit you up, and it will really eat you up and it'll spit you out. But you got to just keep going, and you got to stand back up.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. So some rapid fire questions here. Something a little different than what I've done with the local guys, but I thought this might kind of connect a little bit too with some of the age group of the people that may watch this because of you being younger and things like that. It may kind of draw in some of the younger crowd. So I'm going to kind of do a little rapid fire kind of thing. So, got a few questions. Just first thing that comes to mind, and there's no right or wrong answer. Favorite scripture?
Favorite scripture? I'm probably going to go. This ties in a lot to racing. It's probably 1 Peter 3:9. Do not repay evil with evil, because revenge, I think, is a big thing that drivers they don't think about that, and you see a lot of drivers, especially younger drivers, that would just destroy a race car because they're mad. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that work way too hard. I feel like that they don't deserve to see a race car get torn up just because you're throwing horses
yeah, that's good. Go to worship song whenever you need some motivation to get you in the right spirit.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. I'm on. That's a bit of a curveball for me. I'm not a huge music guy, so I
Okay,
can't really give you a flat answer right here off the top of my head.
no
But
problem.
I
That's
do
good.
like Taylor Swift. I do like Taylor Swift. So.
Okay. Most inspiring faith figure, either from the Bible or someone who's maybe a mentor in your life.
Um, a big motto or a big message I like to see people is in racing, and I can't really think of an exact scripture or verse that off the top of my head that relays this, but a big thing is that treat people the way you want to be treated. So
Okay.
we kind of halfway answer your question there. And a lot of mentors in racing that I talk to will always tell you that is always treat people the way that you want to be treated on the track, off the track, in daily life. That's something that people should always strive for, to treat people the way that you want to be treated.
That's good. That's good. The biggest lesson in life that you feel like so far God has taught you.
Going back to that watch a couple minutes ago, the whole knowing that hey, someone's always going to kind of be in the corner, and to get back up. You're going to get knocked down a lot, and it's going to be okay. Like you're always going to have someone there for you, and that's a big part of racing in life is realizing hey, someone will always be in your corner, no matter what you do, what you say, or who you say it to, or how you say it to someone, or what you do. There's always going to be moments where you feel like you're at your lowest, and with racing especially, there will be a lot of low points, and so you got to get back up. And that's one thing that I've definitely learned. I feel like is it's okay to get back up.
That's good. Finish this sentence. Faith on the racetrack means what?
Everything,
That's good. That's good. I like that.
everything is it's definitely a very prevalent. Like I said, we do the every day we do the prayers, in the drivers meeting, and everything. And so I think it's very prevalent. It should be prevalent because it kind of gives people, not to forget the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's good. That's
I
awesome.
agree.
So, do you have anything? We already talked about things that you would say to young people out there, kind of chasing after their big dreams as well. But is there anything else that you would want to say to just kind of help inspire or motivate people that may come across this and maybe looking for a career in racing, whether it be behind the wheel or, sitting on a pit box or wherever it may be at? Is there anything you want to close with to kind of give them some motivation?
The big thing I'll tell people, and like I said, I talk to a lot of people every single day. It seems people reach out to me looking for advice, or like, hey, I'm just trying to kind of get my feet wet in the garage area. Like, can you help me out? The big thing I tell people is always push yourself. Like, always set yourself to, or always try and strive to, like, make a connection. Jump outside your comfort zone if you have to. Go to the track and introduce yourself to teams and to different sponsors and team owners and drivers. And always try and be constantly building connections. Like, if you're going to track to watch, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But try and at least walk out of there with, a new connection that you made that day. And you'll realize that before too long, if you do that enough, you'll start kind of landing opportunities. That people say, "Hey, do you want to come hop in the spark?" And, "Hey, can you come to the track and help us out? Hey, we need some help here. Hey, can you come do this?" And those opportunities will eventually lead to something much bigger. Just keep pushing after it.
Yeah, cool. Well, I won't keep you too much longer. Yeah, I'll close this out. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that you've provided us to be able to speak with Brayton today, and just thank you for young men like him that are chasing after their dreams and trusting in you, Lord. That they lean on family, they lean on friends, and just know that you create opportunities when there seems to be none there. May everyone who sees this interview and this time that Brayton and I spent together just be touched by you, Father, and may it inspire the young people that are out there to chase after their dreams and to know that you can provide. We love you, Lord, and we give you all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. So I appreciate it, man.
This has been Fast Faith with Michael Weiser. I want to say thank you to Brayton Laster for taking time to talk with us about his journey in racing and his journey in life. We'll see you next time on Fast Faith, where speed meets the spirit.